And my thoughts went back many years ago, 34 years ago, as a matter of fact. Now, I was a mere youth 34 years ago, but that was when I first started at Missouri Southern, 1983. And I remember back to those days and the excitement that I had that first day on campus. And I think that same excitement is here today with the students that are starting, and Southern's a great place, very appreciative of it. If everyone is okay with this, I would like to move the election of board secretary from down towards the bottom of the agenda to the top of the agenda. That way, we will elect a secretary that can start taking the minutes. Otherwise, we're going to just have to sit here and look at ourselves. So, Alan, you want to tell what's going on?
I'm still trying to recover just a little bit from you starting in 1983, and I graduated from here in 1979. But as you all know, Sharon Odom retired, and in fact, she's gone on vacation, used up some vacation time. She has agreed, however, to serve part-time to help Laura in the transition. Laura Boyd comes to us from a colleague. Been there, I think, 13 years, did you say, as an administrative assistant. She's doing a great job. Getting her 1 week, and we throw her right into the beginning of school and board meetings and all that. She's going to do a great job already, is doing a great job. Recommend that she be your secretary too.
Very good. So we have that recommendation. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Governor Fleischhager, is there a second?
Second.
Governor Plotnick, any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Welcome aboard, Laura. First item of normal business is approval of the June 14th board minutes. It's been a while since we met, I guess. Is there a motion to do so?
I move we approve the minutes.
Governor Flanagan, is there a second?
Second.
Governor Fleischhager, any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Reports. Our treasurer's report. Ms. Eis.
Thank you, and good morning. I almost said good afternoon, but good morning. The first 2 weeks in August, we had the auditors on campus, obviously doing our normal annual audit review. It's going very well, and we are on track to present in October as we try to do every year. For FY17, we always talk about kind of where we ended up in cash. We ended up at about $11.7 million. That's not a final number because the audit isn't through, but it looks like we had a difference of an increase in cash of about $800,000. When we move to the current year for FY18, we'll look at the financial statements from July 31 of 2017. And for the current year, the cash balance is at $9.1 million, and that's an increase over the prior year of 1.4. Looking at the statement of net position, we have total assets of $182 million. We have total liabilities of $95 million, which gives us a net position of $87 million. The next statement that we look at is the comparative statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Total operating revenue increased by $1.1 million, and of that, about $800,000 is in tuition and fees, which goes back to the excitement on campus. Looks like we may have an increase in enrollment, and we did increase tuition. So $800,000 of that is from tuition. Total operating expenses over the prior year, we had a decrease of about $50,000. Non-operating revenue has a decrease of $338, and you can see right off the bat out of the first month that we have a decrease in state appropriations of $184,000 over the prior year. And in addition, there is a line on there, the money that we got last year for the dental program. There's a decrease over the prior year for that of $161,000. We're looking at an income before the revenues in the current year of 18.7. The prior year had 17.9, so this gives us an increase of about $800,000. Other items going on in our office, we're still working on the bank transition. That's going very well. You can imagine a lot of moving pieces. It looks like that we are still on track to do that late September. An official date is October 1, but it will probably happen mid to end of September. And as I mentioned before, the audit we hope to present at the October board meeting. you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Linda?
Move approval of the treasurer's report.
We have a motion to approve the treasurer's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Governor Haley, Governor Flanagan, take your pick. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I might just comment on $800,000. You'll recall that was, the critical number was operating cash. And we determined earlier that if we ended the year with an increase, that mid-year board would look at maybe
Right.
send some of that back to the faculty and staff.
Right.
Stipends or something.
Right.
That's the number. We don't know exactly, but it's right around 800,000. We'll know after the audit.
We'll know after the audit,
Right.
and definitely a lot of hard work by a lot of people, especially with an appropriation cut last year. You can tell there was a lot of hard work to go into that number.
Well, operating expenses were down and revenues were up. People did a great job. And, it was a great game. We had the critical number and we'll stick with it if we can. Hopefully, it'll vote as well.
Great. Great. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the report indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. VP for Business Affairs, Mr. Yust.
Thank you. Look at a brief construction report. We're winding down the Reynolds Hall renovation. First floor is complete now, and classes were held there in the summertime. We have set up a math classroom, a larger math classroom in the annex, and moved some of the adjunct instructors out there so we can have larger math classes this fall. We should have a formal ribbon cutting for the first floor Reynolds in September, I believe.
After the September board meeting.
As far as Nixon Hall, we are getting very close to finalizing the plans for that facility. And I have been purposely dragging my feet on breaking ground on Nixon Hall because I wanted to make sure that capital appropriations are in the budget for this year with the state, and they currently are. In fact, Linda has started to draw down on some of that. So we will break ground on Nixon Hall probably in November with the anticipated finishing of that project in the spring of 2019. We'll hold our first classes in there. The trail project with the city, there's really no change on that. That's in the city's hands. We're just waiting on them. And final note, we probably need to have a budget meeting at the start of the spring or at the September board meeting. Need to have a budget meeting in September.
Very good.
That's it.
All right, Rob. Thank you very much. Any questions for Rob? Board of our athletic director, Mr. Bruggeman.
Hi, good morning. You should have the report in front of you. I'm just going to highlight a few components of it. First, regarding the MIAA with the leadership change that we've had there, I've seen a lot of positive changes, including that we have a task force that's working on the webcasting for the MIAA and each of the institutions. I serve on that task force, but really I rely on Randon Coffey and Justin Maskus because I don't understand the technology components of it, but I do understand what final product should look like. So it's been very helpful that we're one of the 5 schools that are being represented on that project, and it's good to get our input into that. I do want to mention something about our insurance as far as athletic insurance. We went to RFP for a broker again. I think it's good to do that we have a 3-year contract, and they wanted to renew, and of course I prefer to go to RFP and see what comes out of it. In the process, we ended up saving some more money and still staying with the same firm. So that's been very good. Dissinger Re's been very cooperative with us. The interesting thing about it is that our rates have actually gone down, despite the fact that you see rates across the country going up. And the reason behind that is we've actually been able to utilize some of the additional resources we've saved on not having as many expenses on insurance to put back into our pool, where we created, an example, we bought knee braces for all of our offensive linemen. Well, last year we know it saved us 2 knee surgeries. Maybe not good for Dr. Rentz or Freeman Health Systems, but it's a reference to Carlos. But in that whole process, the reality was it saved us quite a bit of money, and that's actually helps us with keeping our premiums down. So that's been a very productive thing, and I want to thank our trainers for putting forth the effort, and actually, honestly, Freeman Health Systems with their trainers and their docs and the preventive things, as well as the PT that we do for rehab. So that's been very productive for us. This Saturday, August 26th, if you're able to make it, we're going to have the fall kickoff for all of our sports at Reggie Hughes Stadium. There's going to be a lot of activities. There will be a linebacker town hall meeting. There will be food trucks. There will be, festivities. We'll also be doing are you going to talk about the induction and all, or the naming? Okay, so Sally Beard, there will be a naming of the actual athletic department suite area over in North End Zone facility after her, and there's going to be a dedication following the linebacker meeting that day. So if you're able to make that, that'd be fantastic. We did a little giveaway called a flag giveaway. It was something we tried on social media. We bought 100 flags, typical size Missouri Southern flags, and put that out there. It was about 9:30 or 10 in the morning on a Tuesday, and the next morning by 7 a.m. they were all gone. They had been requested, and they were through 12 states across the country, and in Spain is where we sent those flags. So it was a pretty neat to see that. We didn't anticipate it coming that fast, and really social media exploded with those 100 flags. So our flags are out there, people want them, and so we're looking at some other opportunities in the future to do something similar. Regarding compliance in the NCAA, we do have something called the ISSG, and this 5 years ago we completed our last ISSG. The NCAA does come to your campus and they review it. It's similar to an HLC visit, which you would see at the academic side of the university. This is really what the NCAA does. It's a similar type endeavor. In that, we have several committees that are formed. There's criteria, checklists you have to go through. And part of that is reviewing our previous ISSG. And in that process, it's clear that we have one of the committees is the Gender Equity and Diversity Committee. At one point, Maria Bruggeman was part of that committee as well. In that, there's a clear indication that we need to have an additional women's sport added at Missouri Southern, just regarding the Title IX components of that, and also with the recommendations from the ISSG. So part of that has been reviewing that over the last few years. We've had conversations about it at President's Cabinet level and around the conference, and we're looking right now to look at adding women's golf. That's not finalized, of course, but in that process, that seems to be the most cost-effective one. It's a common sport within the region. Twin Hills hosts the state championship, has the last couple of years for high school girls in this area, and so it's clearly popular. It's well represented at the conference level, and we believe it's a very cost-effective model for us to be able to add that, including when you add the number of women to that sport, which is an opportunity that's great for them to have the scholarships. When you kind of go through that, it's a very cost-effective model for the university as far as revenue and expenses. So just want to kind of give you a heads up on that. We've had a lot of changes in departmental staffing. I think we had 16 in the last month and a half. So I listed those there, and it could be very boring, monotonous probably to read through them, but we've had a lot of changes with that. I just want to highlight that component of it. Finally, the last point here would be the linebacker campaign began on June 1st. You have a linebacker brochure in front of you. Feel free to join the linebackers. It's a great way to support the athletics department and our student athletes, of which we anticipate this year having over 480 student athletes in the program. Part of this is we did a mini game that we're working with our coaches on. It's part of the great game of education. And the mini game is, as each coach brings in new members, that revenue is distributed back in for that first year, minus the handling fee from the foundation, to that program. And so we're hoping that'll help drive some of our numbers. The real benefit to it is that the communications that we have with our linebackers goes out on a regular basis. They get mailings, they'll get emails. It's not overwhelming. It's not like Home Depot and you bought something there 6 years ago, but it's just more, an informational type thing, and keeps them invited to our activities. And so we're looking forward to having a lot more linebackers this year, and as we hit our thresholds and our goals, we end up getting little rewards from the great game of education and the mini game. So we're looking forward to that, and some of our sports have really engaged the process. It's been very good to see. Only last thing I'll mention, just because Andrea's here, that we put wayfinding signs in Leggett and Platt. If you've ever been in Leggett and Platt and Young Gym, it gets very confusing in that building, and on the first day of classes, it's nonstop. When I was in that building, it was nonstop. You know, as a stand there as a director and just telling people where to go. So we put wayfinding signs in there. It looks very, very nice, very attractive, looks good in the building. And I think it's gonna save us a lot of effort, so.
We were I'll make a short comment. Marty Conklin is usually He always is at the front of the building every year, every semester directing students, and we were worried because he wasn't going to be there this year. And the signs have helped a lot. This morning we were commenting on how much easier it is for the students. So thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
And they look very good too, so less confused students and working out well, so. That concludes my report unless there's any questions or comments on any of the items talked about.
Any questions for Jared? Thank you for your report. I know it's a busy time of year starting out. Dr. Hodson?
You have a copy of my report in front of you, which includes updates on fundraising and admissions. But I would really like to take the few moments I have with you this morning to update you on work being done by the Performance Funding Task Force out of the Missouri Department of Higher Education in Jeff City. There are 10 members of the task force, 5 from four-year publics and 5 from two-year publics. And Missouri Southern was fortunate enough to get one of those 5 seats for public higher ed, and I'm pleased that Dr. Marble asked me to join that group, and so we've met 4 times. We will meet one more time in September to finalize the new performance measures. You'll recall the 6 performance funding measures are how we gain access to new funding each year. And so you have to meet those 6 each time in order to have access to that new money. 4 of the 6 are significantly changing, and I'll walk you through some of that. 2 are remaining unchanged. Really, the concern and the reason for the fresh look at performance funding, legislators said it was confusing. Universities could pick from a menu of options. It was not possible to compare apples to apples across the system, so we've eliminated the menu of options from the performance funding. We will be compared across the system to every public institution in 5 of the 6 measures. One of the 2 that stays the same has a couple of options, but not too many. They felt like we were changing our peer groups, and so now MDHE will assign the peers, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And then they just wanted it to be easily communicated. They wanted to be able to tell the public, here is what higher education is doing in some key areas where they had concerns. And so we feel like we've addressed the governor and the legislators' concerns on performance funding. The 4 new measures, new or significantly adjusted, would be the cost to produce a degree. And so we're looking at operating expenditures divided by the total number of credentials awarded in a year. And so operating expenditures would not include auxiliaries such as housing or bookstore. It would not include grants, research dollars. It's just the cost to run the baseline institution divided by the number of credentials that you awarded in a year. The second one, which is a common concern amongst legislators, is the percent of your operating budget you spend on academics, making sure that you're not disproportionately spending on management, athletics, support services, that instruction, research, and public service are at the heart of your budget, and we have a good story to tell there. The old measurement was, we called it graduation rate, 6-year graduation rate, and it was first time, full time. So you had to start at Missouri Southern and you had to finish at Missouri Southern. And we know that that is a diminishing portion of the population. In fact, the Commissioner of Higher Education at our first meeting said for the entire state of Missouri, less than 18% of the graduates each year are first time, full time. We call it a swirl. You transfer in, you stop out, you switch institutions, you take some credits over here, you transfer the credits in. The old model of I started as a freshman here, I went through in 4 years, I graduated, I transferred in no credits, I went to no other institution, I was Missouri Southern for 4 years. That is diminishing every year. And yet we were measuring our 6-year graduation rate on that number. So after much debate and consternation, particularly among the larger schools who tend to cling to the 6-year graduation rate as a core measurement of their effectiveness, that they have a greater proportion of first-time, full-time than Western, Central, Southern, other institutions would. After much discussion, we've come up with what we're calling completion efficiency. So that sounds like a government name for something, but it is the number of completions each year for credentials you award per student FTE. So are you graduating roughly 25% of your students every year? Are you moving them through? What is your rate? Well, that's a much better number for us than first time, full time, because we struggled telling that story, and so they would assume that our graduation rate was very, very low because we were only telling the first time, full time story. Well, this is completions per enrollment, your total enrollment, how many of them are graduating every year. And so that's a great step forward for us on the performance funding. The fourth measure, which hasn't been nailed down, is affordability. The governor has asked us to identify an affordability metric. And again, that responds directly to concerns the governor and the legislators have with higher education. I will tell you that in the room, the day we discussed affordability, several folks asserted that we already have an affordability metric. It's called Senate Bill 389. You cannot raise tuition above the cost of inflation, and so Missouri is among the most affordable higher education experiences in the United States because of Senate Bill 389. Now, inside higher ed, we have a different view of Senate Bill 389. We think it keeps us from making advances we need on tuition, but there is an affordability metric, and it's been in place since 2012, 9. Yeah. So anyway, and then the two that didn't change, the percent of your graduates employed within 6 months, that one hasn't changed, and then the one about student learning and quality, professional licensure, general ed assessment, that one has not changed either. And then finally on the peer groups, again, we used to be able to select our own peers, and there was some shenanigans among some other institutions. They would shift their peers to affect their numbers periodically, and so now they've locked us down. MDHE will pick our peers for us, and it's based on 4 criteria. Our total budget, are these peer institutions of roughly the same financial size as Missouri Southern? Are they the same student headcount size? Enrollment is the second factor. The percent of state appropriations as a percent of your total budget. So are we financed publicly at the same level? And then our average ACT score. And so we went from 32 peers down to 19, and only 4 of our previous 32 made the switch with us. There are no other Missouri schools in our peer institutions. And Dr. Carson commented over the weekend in email, you felt like the peers were relevant, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, so we feel like this is a good move for Missouri Southern, that the 6 measurements will allow us to tell our story a little more accurately, and that the change in peers hasn't, we don't believe at this time, really impacted us that dramatically. It's important to note of the 6, they only use the peers on 1 measurement, the percent of your expenditures on academics. That's the only time you're measured against your peers. The other 5 measurements are only Missouri schools against Missouri schools. So the peer groups have diminished in relevance in this new version. So I just wanted to keep you updated. The coordinating board will act upon the recommendation at their September meeting.
Very interesting.
Brad, do you have any estimate as to what the completion rate would be as opposed to the graduation rate at this point?
So the meeting was Thursday, and I came home Friday and emailed the folks at Institutional Research, and we're going to meet in the coming weeks to review how these numbers flesh out for us, but I don't have a sense today. But just anecdotally, it's got to be better measuring 100% of your graduates rather than 18% of your graduates. So.
Very good. Any questions for Dr. Carson?
How's enrollment look?
Good. We're hovering right at a 1% year to date, and so we've got 4 weeks ahead of us of class until the census date, but if we can stay right there at flat or just a little above, it looks good. So when we hear our peer institutions, some of them may be down, we're very happy with flat. Now I will tell you we're very pleased. Freshman admits are up 3%, transfer admits are up 4%, and so the input of the funnel looks really good, but the total head count would be flat to 1% growth.
But any growth is going to be great this year because many schools, they'll be down.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Dr. Hodson? Brett, I appreciate you being involved in this process. It's great that we've got someone there. So, report from our Provost and VP of Academic Affairs, Dr. Carson.
Thank you so much. You have my report there. I'm just going to go over a few items to review some things since we last gathered, and then talk a little bit about some strategic initiatives and academic affairs for the year. First, and very exciting, we had our inaugural green coat ceremony. We hosted the 25 incoming students in the Yours Julius cohort here with the green coat ceremony. As you all know, that when you're admitted to medical school, one of the very first activities is a white coat ceremony to symbolize your admission into medical school. And we wanted to do something to recognize that these students are essentially admitted once they proceed through Missouri Southern, and so we did the green coat ceremony. They were very, very excited. We had set up 150 chairs. We had sort of guesstimated maybe they would each bring 4 people with them. And I think over the course of that ceremony on Saturday morning, we ended up adding another 100 chairs. So it was very, very successful, very appreciative of the media coverage. The students, even if it was 96 degrees that day, the students wore their coats all afternoon. They wore them to the freshman convocation where we give the medals, and kept them all through the events of the evening. So we're very excited. We're also very thankful that KCU had such strong attendance at the event. Their provost came in from Kansas City. Their dean was here, their entire selection committee, and many of their faculties. That was a lovely event and a tradition that we started that we hope to be able to continue. Already this morning, I got an email from the dean of KCU asking when our students would be available to come visit and have lunch on their campus. So again, now that we have students, we are beginning the evolution of other forms of our partnership with them. I think everybody so far has already talked about MDHE and their reports. MDHE has become very, very active and very engaged in a lot of activities in which we are working on. One of the things I don't have in the report, but it's a good follow-up to Brad, is that we're also looking at certificates or embedded credentials where students earn something in a related disciplinary, enriching related area when they get their degree. They can earn them at the same time. They can pursue certificates post-baccalaureate, or they can do them sort of standalone programs. Over the summer, we benchmarked what other Missouri institutions are doing and what would be robust academically, and we are going to begin to offer, we have to put them through the new program review process for MDHE, but we're gonna begin to develop and offer to our students enriching 12 credit hour course certificates. It's different. Minors are currently 18 hours at a minimum on this campus, but credentials actually are official. Certificates are an official credential of the state of Missouri. So we will be able to count those as credentials, as completion degrees, if you will, in the count. I wanted to add that because we're trying to be very, very strategic in our ability to achieve these performance-based funding metrics. Program review, we have talked about a good bit over the course of the last semester. It's the MDHE initiated low completer review of courses. We had 28 programs on that list. We submitted in early July our defense of those programs. MDHE got back with us and said they had no further questions on our defense. They were pleased with the way that we had submitted them. And they tell us now that we will hear the disposition of those programs or have the opportunity for one more round of defense sometime in September. It has been a big program for them, and so we're anxiously awaiting the disposition of that. We have also begun over the course of the summer since we last gathered our work with our partner community colleges on meta majors. Meta majors are essentially constellations of similar or relevant degrees or other forms of credentials. And the idea is that we know factually that baccalaureate students come in and they will switch majors once or numerous times, and that for community college students that we would like for them to be able to articulate as much of their earned credit as possible. So we thought that students often have a better idea of the field that they want to be in, something in healthcare, something in business. So they have a good idea about the field, but maybe not the specific options, or maybe they don't really know what management versus marketing is necessarily, or respiratory versus radiology. So if we create these meta majors that have as similar as possible first up to 4 semesters of curriculum, they can get a feeling for the field, identify the subspecialties in the field, and they can jump to a specific track without losing hours. So something we're actively and already began working with our community college partners, and we're going to be working with our schools to identify that. And then math pathways, we continue to be a leader in the state in math pathways. We will this semester at some point sign an MOU that says that we agree to recognize and think it's a good idea academically that teacher ed students have a very specific math course designated as prerequisite for them. We'll have one in business, we'll have one for the humanities, and then we'll have one for STEM majors. So as opposed to the one-size-fits-all model where algebra is the starting point for all students in any curriculum, and we know that is a barrier course that we are going to customize along perhaps with the rest of our gen ed to make sure that our gen ed hours are most appropriate and beneficial. I wanted to share with you that we joined a consortium last year to apply for Perkins enhancement funding, which provides us specific funds to provide for equipment, to make equipment purchases that really, quite frankly, otherwise we would have a challenging time acquiring. And the consortium is Franklin Tech and Crowder and us. We are eligible for membership because we have 2-year associate degree programs. And we're very excited that we were awarded about $125,000 to spend on different equipment. The majority, $75,000 or $80,000 of that is going to be used in health sciences to purchase a simulation mannequin, if you will. The mannequins we have were acquired when the building first opened about 10 years ago, and they're at the end of life. They're literally, on hospice, our mannequins are. So, but they're $80,000 each. So obviously that's a huge, big chunk. We're able to get that, and then we're going to use the residual $50,000 to acquire needed equipment for 5 or 6 other programs. So we're very excited about that infusion and continue to try and be very proactive in applying for academic grants that will help us to get the equipment we need to offer the latest education. You have a handout. We're very excited. It's the first time we were able to produce this brochure of our new faculty. It goes through their credentials. We are very, very proud. We have a very good mix of senior experienced scholars as well as emerging scholars. Some are ABD in their careers, but we are proud to present them all here to you. I really want to take a moment to recognize the faculty search committees. Some of these individuals are filling searches that we have had open for 2 years. We have been very meticulous and hiring only when we all feel perfectly content that it is a good match. So if we went through a round of interviews and felt like these people may be okay, but if they were not going to be perfect, we passed and we just reopened the searches again. So some of these searches have been going on for a very long time, but I really think that diligence pays off for us. I also really want to take this opportunity to thank the faculty search committees who have done so many phone interviews, so many Skype, so many dinners, so many bringing people at 4 a.m. in the morning to the airport that I can never really fully thank them. But very, very immersed, very engaged in making sure we have the right people, and we're so proud of these 18. One of the individuals you will see, the last one on the back cover, is one of our new deans, Dean Jeffrey Zimmerman. He is on your agenda for you all to meet him today, for us to introduce him to you. Unfortunately, last night I got a frantic phone call that there was a problem with this closing, and now his stuff is going to have to go to mini storage, short-term storage, and his wife is doing something with the move, and so he had to meet the moving van at the mini storage, which, believe me when I tell you, was not part of the grand plan. And he apologizes and very much would appreciate the opportunity to meet you all at another date. He has been on the job for a while. He actually moved into student residences. He came very, very early and worked all through the summer. Has actually been in student residences, has already met with a lot of different stakeholders of the school and is very involved. But since he's not here, we're talking about it, I just want to, since they're all here, really quickly introduce you to our dean's team. You know, we've had a lot of changes. And the other 3 academic deans are here, so don't mean to put you all on the spot, but Lorinda Hackett, Dean of Education, and now we have a Hackett who was Dean of Education, and a Hackett unrelated who's Department Head in Psychology, which is in that area, so.
I send emails to her to myself now.
Exactly, so very, very pleased to have her. Marcy Archer, Arts and Sciences, and she's from the Physics Department, and then Rick Schooler, Health Sciences. Again, we joke about all the time, who is now our senior dean with one year and 2 months experience. So. We have been meeting regularly throughout the summer. Of course, our work continues. We're not on an academic year, and they've already done a tremendous job. And I'm very grateful to you all for, so many things that I can and probably shouldn't mention. So. A couple of just notable recognitions I wanted to share with you all. Every other year on this campus, the history has been that we go through a full in-depth process of assessment of student learning outcomes. Every program defines what we want our students to master prior to their graduation, And not only do we articulate those, we have instruments to measure, we review accomplishment of that, and then we review plans for remediation or continuous improvement. It is very intense. The assessment committee here meets on a weekly basis with every single department, and it's every week it's probably 3 or 4 hours. Every department, the whole team, or as many of them as are willing and able, come in to meet with the assessment committee. We go over this, and it's very intense. But again, it's not just an exercise for accreditation, or it's not just an exercise because the handbook says we have to do it. It was very, very, very developmental this year. We saw a lot of curriculum changes, and I really just wanted to share that of all the great work from all of the academic departments, the art department was recognized as being most excellent in assessment, primarily because they really just threw out everything they have historically been doing that they didn't really want to do, and they just started from scratch. We also got word that, and this visit was a while back, but it's always good to get the final letter after everything is resolved, of the reaccreditation, industrial engineering and technology by ABET. And then at our all academic affairs gathering last week, we recognized 2 outstanding teachers, Sharon Hicklin and Marty Conklin. Marty was referred to earlier. Marty is out of town right now, recovering with his wife, who had a medical procedure, and so we actually made a little video for him and shared it with him, and it was a very nice recognition and trying to engage him. But congratulations to all those. And then to our outstanding advisor, who was in chemistry and physical science, Linnell Gilbert Saunders. She must have had 30 of the most glowing nominations. I'll share them with you all sometime. It just makes your heart warm to all the different sacrifices, personal things that she gave up to work with these students. It was really heartwarming. We have a new partnership with Audubon Center Wildcat Glades. It really is a national treasure, what we have here in Joplin with the Audubon Center. Very, very unique, and the Glades are very unique as well. So we have embarked on a strategic partnership with them involving interns from all different areas, some faculty research projects, some joint possibilities, look at some grants and some other activities. So we're very pleased to work with that all across the campus with them. They will actually be here for the first time on our campus for Community Involvement Day, and trying to get a lot of people really interested and engaged in what they do, because they can in turn help us very much. We have our It's Friday scheduled. Our It's Friday is going to be presenting on October 27th at 3 p.m. Dr. David Penning. He is from the biology department. Dr. Penning has gained national and international respect and prestige for his work on snakes, and it is really groundbreaking. We have a snake lab here now. Very funny to sign purchase orders where normally it may be some computing technology or microscopes, but we're buying pythons or whatever it is we're buying. A little bit different, but thanks to Physical Plant and the Reynolds Hall team and STEM and a lot of others, we have a snake lab here that is really sort of world class, and we just sort of innovate a lot of things to make that happen. And he is doing really very groundbreaking work on snakes, and he's going to share that with us. We have many people who are doing a lot of good things in research, and I'll try to bring them over the course of the year. But you are welcome and encouraged to join us. We are moving it to the library reading room, not because he's bringing samples or subjects. We're just moving it to the library for a little bit more intimate venue. And then finally, later on in the agenda today, Dr. Stebbins will present on the Korea semester. I have included it here because I am just so excited about the schedule. It is very eclectic. The types of activities run the whole gamut, from like line dancing to deep discussions on communist philosophy. And I really think there's something for everyone. And I really sort of think everything is probably for you all. I think you would enjoy them all. So he'll have a moment to share later on. That's my report. Thank you all very much.
Very good. Any questions for Dr. Carson?
Just a comment on the theme semester. Last year, Great Britain, those are picked a couple of years in advance. It's not like all of a sudden it happened. Like Great Britain, Brexit happened. So it was perfect timing. And here we are with Korea.
Very timely.
We have a crystal ball.
It must be something special. I need to borrow that thing.
We might need to talk about it with him, right? If he's got a crystal ball.
That's right, you got a crystal ball, we might talk
That's-
about that a
we
little
need, we need some information.
MDHE.
That's right. Please tell Dr. Zimmerman we do look forward to meeting him, and good luck on his move. And thank you to all the deans for being here today. We appreciate you being here and certainly appreciate everything that you do. Next up is the VP for Student Affairs, Mr. Fullerton.
Thank you. And as Dr. Carson said, Dr. Zimmerman spent some quality time with us in student housing over the summer, and was fortunate enough to spend a couple months in the quads, and actually would have been content to stay there had that been available past August. So
Darren booted him.
we had to move him out for some students. But, just a few things on the report there that you have in front of you. The first year student convocation, and you can see there's a photo on the back of that incoming class that was taken. Over 350 incoming students participated in the first year convocation. That was an exciting day. It's an opportunity, many of you have seen that and have been there in person. It's a reverse graduation. The students cross the stage, they get their names announced, their cities, where they're from, cities or schools. And so it's a very engaging time for them, an exciting time, and the parents love that. And so we were proud to be a part of that. Open registration days, we want to say thank you to the faculty and staff. Thursday and Friday were open registration days, and especially on Friday, if the board members tried to contact the campus or the audience tried to contact the campus, we didn't have phone, internet, email service for most of Friday. And we still enrolled almost over 100 students during that time. And so tremendous effort by not only IT to get us back up and running. It wasn't anything on campus, it was a third-party vendor. Our supplier was having an issue throughout the whole Midwest.
Make
So
sure you point that out.
absolutely. Now, our IT folks were troubleshooting. It was not our problem.
Fiber optic line, that
Yeah.
was.
But our people were still able to take care of students even though we couldn't register. 268 students were registered in the 2 days during that open registration time. Many of you know Kelly Wilson, and she did retire effective August 1st after 31 years of service and as director of our Advising, Counseling, and Testing Center. 15 to finish we have talked about in the past, so that is officially kicking off. Even though that has helped us already, we started implementing that during Southern Welcome this summer, and we saw an increase in the number of hours that our freshman students were taking. And so that program is off and running. DegreeWorks advising software, we've talked to you a little bit about that. That will go live on Wednesday, September the 6th, and that will be a tremendous tool for our faculty, staff, and students. It is literally a red light, green light. If you have passed that requirement for graduation, it's a green light. If you have not, it's a red light. And then it will also have, if your courses are in progress, it will have a blue indicator showing that you're currently taking those. And so it's a much simplified degree audit system for them, and so we're very excited for that. Dr. Carson mentioned Community Day, and that's coming up. The Career Services Office coordinates that on Wednesday. Right now, they have over 130 community vendors that have signed on to participate and to highlight their services to our students. So we're excited about that. Some of the numbers to the right, the great game is giving us many targets, not just the financial. Financial has been phenomenal, but also it's giving the different areas targets or metrics to look at. Residence hall occupants, right now we're at 967. You remember our original capacity was 905. So we're over capacity, but we've had 1,105 applications in there. Advising for this last year had over 5,000 contacts with students, and that's a 21% increase. And then some numbers on the back under the great game, I'll just let you peruse, but the financial aid FAFSAs are up, registrar's office articulated almost 12% more transcripts. So when we talk about the excitement with enrollment being up, when we talk about the possibility of adding more sports or additional athletes and those things, you see those numbers across the spectrum. And so it does have an impact far-reaching just outside the original department that's looking at it. And so we're excited to be tracking these things and think that's going to give us a greater view of the campus as a whole and help us during the process of the great game. With that, I will end my report and answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Fullerton? Darren, thank you. Next up is the report of the Faculty Senate, and in today, and you were here last time, I
was here in
believe.
June as well. Dr. Nicoletti was not able to attend today. He has class at this time period. So I will be sitting in. Faculty returned to campus last week, and I just want to comment. I've heard so many positive things about the Friday meeting. The speaker that the administration brought in was phenomenal. And so thank you just for sharing that with us. I think it was a great way to start the year. We have, let's see, our Faculty Senate meets for the first time next Monday, and we have the report that Dr. Nicoletti provided has several different things that we'll be working on this year, focusing on the restructuring task force, the strategic plan with the university, also working on a new social media policy and a conflict of interest policy. Another thing that I think Dr. Nicoletti has really taken on as Faculty Senate President is designing and implementing a Faculty Senate website so that his reports can be disseminated, that the content is available, that faculty really know what is going on campus. And so he'll be really working on that this coming year. Some of these items are continued from last year. There's a lot of new things going on, and we'll continue. And we're just excited for the year. So thank you for having me today.
Certainly. Any questions for Dr. Cullors? Thank you for being here today. Our Staff Senate President, Mrs. Frazier.
Hi, I'm Sharon Fraser. I'm the president of Staff Senate this year. And I submitted a report, so you can read that. But I just want to add that we've got a great group of senators this year, and I've only been at the helm a couple months, but let me tell you, they are ready to go. They're very engaging. If there's ever anything that needs a volunteer to help with, they are on it. And especially the executive committee, Angela Bennett, President-elect, and Scott Meeker, they've been awesome. I send out an email and I need something and they're right on it. I get an email with the answer right away. So I anticipate a really great year, and we encourage any staff members, if they have a question, comment, problem, whatever, to get a hold of one of the senators and we'll bring it forward. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Frazier? Thank you for being here. Next up is the report of our Student Senate President, but I understand for Mr. Blank, Jacob Lane is here today, which I understand you're the Secretary of the Student Senate.
Yes, sir. Today I'd like to report some of last year's projects. We passed appropriations for adding additional security cameras on the campus and to install sound panels in the FEMA shelter. Right now, as a Student Senate, we're looking to elect the additional senators for this fall. I will say one thing we're looking to do before homecoming is actually make certain reforms on our Constitution and bylaws. One such amendment will be to elect our senators in the spring for the most part. That way we can have our sophomore to senior senators already elected coming into the fall. That's my report.
Very good. Jacob, thank you for being here today. Any questions of Jacob?
No questions. I do have a comment about all of the staff senate, faculty senate, student senate. They all did just a fabulous job. Appreciate it very, very much. All of you.
We don't have any board committees at this time to report on, so Dr. Marble, we're ready for your report.
Thank you, Cumber. First, I have a report there for you. The first item to see, of course, is Sharon Odom's retirement. Sharon did a great job for many years. We have planned a reception for Sharon prior to the first football game. So it'll be in the north end zone facility at 5:30 before the gathering in the alumni room, which is the smaller of the two rooms. But if you can make it to that, we'd sure be delighted to see you there to recognize both the Sharon and Gary. It was kind of a team effort. Gary was always here too, so looking forward to that. And we're delighted to have Laura on. So Laura, thank you for jumping in here as quickly as you have. The strategic plan, we started with our retreat back, talking about the mission back, a couple months ago. Passed that along to the faculty and staff at Friday's meeting, how we plan to get their input into the mission too, with identifying words, special words that are particularly important to, or phrases that are particularly important to our mission. Both we've scheduled some face-to-face meetings, but also we have making it available online so that everyone can participate in the way they would like to. We intend to do that also with not just faculty and staff, but also students and then stakeholders, other like the foundation board, other folks that are connected to us. So we get all those words gathered up, kind of correlate them with what you have, bring them back to the board at another meeting and see if we can come up with a mission. Then we'll follow that up with SWOT analysis and environmental scanning the same kind of way. We were privileged, I guess, a couple months ago to have Drew Erdman and Zora Mulligan on campus. Drew is the Chief Operating Officer for the state of Missouri, and Zora is the Commissioner of Higher Education. They did repeat over and over that the administration is focused on two things. That's excellence and efficiency. And we were able to show them efficiency, I think, like they probably haven't seen other places, where our scoreboards impressed them a lot. In fact, they wanted to share it statewide. Can we do that? We assured them that they could for a fee. Haven't heard back from them. So I'm not sure, but they really thought that, that was drilling down into where they need to go. So I think that something like that will show up at other places. Excellence is harder to measure, and they're trying to figure out exactly how they're going to do that too. That's part of the performance funding work, but I'm sure that they'll figure that all out. We did schedule lunch that day, at really the request of Mr. Erdman, with folks from Joplin and the Chamber of Commerce, the city council, and our friends at Crowder College, so they can learn a little more about the area, but especially so Mr. Erdman could learn some things about emergency response, tornado and recovery, because at the time they were still working with I think 50 counties that had flooding problems. He did go away with some good things, so it was a good day. Just a reminder, the budget that we adopted, you'll recall at the time we adopted the budget for the university, the General Assembly had recommended a 6.58% reduction. The governor had recommended a 9% reduction, but we did build in a 9% reduction into our budget anyway. So when it changed, it didn't change our outlook at all. So don't worry about that. Also this summer, I was very fortunate to spend a week in Grand Rapids, Michigan, at the Acton Institute, where the focus was developing productive and virtuous society. 15 college and university presidents were invited and paid for by the Plaster Foundation, so I wanted to thank them publicly for paying our way. Other schools, Missouri schools, Lindenwood was there, Hannibal, LaGrange, Southwest Baptist. It was a very, very good week, and I do appreciate very much the Plaster Foundation doing that. Regarding the Great Game of Education, we are still negotiating a final agreement with SRC and the Great Game of Business folks on intellectual property and where the Great Game of Education fits into that. And we needed to engage a new attorney because Hush Blackwell represents us, but they also represent SRC. And they represented them longer, so we engaged the services of John Dolmans, local attorney with connections to the university, son of Glenn and Myrna Dolmans. So we know we're going to get good representation there, and I think they're already moving the ball down the road as well. Dr. Cragen went to Australia and presented at EduTech. I understand they had some technical problems at EduTech, which seems odd, but he did make some contacts there. And we have won the Pioneer Award from SRC, and we'll have a group in attendance to receive that award, including Governor Gibson, who's going to join the culture committee to go to the award ceremony.
Where is that awards?
I think it's in Dallas, I think. I'm not sure when. October?
First week in September.
September. I'm not gonna be able to go. Oh, it's the same week that we have, Sheena Crichton's on campus, so, I'll be here. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I have a couple things on here in the fall. Welcome back. Friday, we did, I have energized faculty and staff. Staff was here all summer, so it was just welcome, welcome back, but welcome back to the faculty. We had great updates, I think, from the cabinet members, appreciate that. Dr. Malia Stockham talked about Generation Z, and that's the next group coming. We've been dealing with millennials, we've dealt with baby boomers, and Gen X. Generation Z is the next group. And she talked about all of it. She just did a fabulous job, I think, and I'm really delighted that she was here. And then we had our annual party from 6 to 9 at the Elks Lodge for food and dancing and music and enjoyed ourselves. One thing that I didn't put on here, but I should have, is that this is the 50th year anniversary of moving from downtown down here to Mission Hills. So on October 27th at 10 a.m., we're planning a rededication ceremony of some sort. So we'll be working toward more details and keep you up to date on that. But I just wanted to mention it for everyone. Please, my report.
Very good. Any questions for Dr. Marble? No, thank you for your report. Next up is old business. Is there any old business to come before the body? Hearing none, we move to new business. First up is Dr. Carson for consideration of academic policy proposals.
Thank you. We're trying to get a jump start on many committees, start earlier, but so far they haven't gathered, and I have no academic policies at this time.
That's easy. All right. We've already elected our board secretary, and Dr. Zimmerman is still at mini storage, I understand. Dr. Stebbins is here. Welcome. And you're going to talk with us about the Korean semester.
Thank you for this opportunity to present the Korea semester to you in an overview. And this is the 21st theme semester that we are celebrating this fall. If you look inside the back of your brochure, you can see the 20 countries that we've done in the past. The only country we've done twice is China, the very first one, and then we repeated it 10 years later. And as Dr. Marble mentioned, we have been very fortunate lately in that several of the countries we've selected have ended up being very timely. And we always try to anticipate which countries are going to be in the news, the focus of the world's attention. And if you're interested which countries are going to be in the news a year from now, we're doing the Scandinavia semester. So Sweden, Denmark, Norway, that's where the action is going to be. Take my word for it. So the concept behind the theme semester is to bring the world to the campus. We do emphasize our study abroad programs, but not every student is able to take advantage of those. We bring the world to the students. And the idea is that by the time a student graduates, he or she would have been exposed to 4 or 5 different countries and cultures. So the Korea semester, the emphasis is going to be on South Korea, but we can't ignore the elephant in the room. The dictator of North Korea will be the focus of at least 3 programs. 30 plus events, including 10 films. As Dr. Carson mentioned, I think something for everyone. Some of our students who have studied abroad in Korea are going to do a K-pop workshop. Korean pop is very popular. Take my word for it. Come to the workshops if you want to learn more. Dr. Marble mentioned that the Missouri First Lady is coming. Sheena Crichton's on September 7th, 9:30 on a Thursday morning. And we're not inviting her because she's the governor's wife, although that can't hurt because I think she does have the ear of Governor Crichton's. But we're inviting her because she is the co-director of the Institute for Korean Studies at the University of Missouri. And this institute was just founded in January. So like us, they're trying to be very timely. So she'll be here talking about understanding North Korea. She's an expert. She's written a book about dictators, including Kim Jong-un. We'll have a book signing following her presentation. Probably be some media interviews. So if you can come on September 7th, please try to do so. We'd like to have a big crowd, so she'll go back and tell the governor what a great time she had at Missouri Southern. Food is very popular. We've got a couple of tasting opportunities on September 12th. The evening, Fresh Ideas, our food service provider, is providing an all-Korean meal in the Mays Dining Center. And then on September the 22nd, Jin's Korean Grill from Springfield is going to do kind of an exhibition of some Korean dishes with food tasting included. That's at 11 o'clock on a Friday morning. Again, we've got 10 films. You should have a little small passport for the films, and students like to get their passport stamped every time they attend one of these films. These are on Tuesday evenings. And we're finding that even community members come out and like to get their passport stamped. The students who attend the most films win a prize. So that's some motivation and encouragement for them to come. So we're very pleased with what we put together. The music department has a couple of concerts scheduled. The art department has an ongoing exhibition right now. There's a reception this afternoon at 4 o'clock to kick that off. But we think, again, this will be a good time to showcase the culture of South Korea and at the same time take a look at what's happening with North Korea. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stebbins.
Dr. Stebbins, how do you market this? Do you market it outside of the university to other towns or?
We do.
Okay.
We do. We have a mailing list of about 2,000. We send out these brochures. We send it to Crowder College. We send it to Thomas Jefferson Independent Day School, College Heights Christian School. We have a rather robust website that lists everything. And so I should have said that our events are very popular with the community. They like to come out and hear the lectures themselves, just like the students.
And the International Music and Food Festival is outgrown its space too. That's another thing we do every year.
That's in the spring, the World Music and Cuisine Festival every April. We usually have about 800 people sampling food from around the world and listening to world music at the same time.
So you won't want to miss that.
Thank you, Dr. Stebbins. Are there any other items to come before the body today? Looks like our next meeting will be on September 15th. We're good.
We'll be scheduling the budget meeting that morning.
Yes, we will have a budget meeting that morning. Thank you, Chief. Well, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I invite you all to picnic and clips viewing outside on the oval.
Great.
So moved.
I'll second.
Governor Plotnick, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you for attending. I think it's 11 something. These are not safe to drive.
She does now.
Lunch.